Well, it's great to be talking to you, Adil. And you know, the fintech sector, Bank Bazaar in specific, and the fintech sector in general, has of course been the sort of poster child for a lot of what's been happening in India: UPI, digital transformation, and fintech. Perhaps not the best of times right now, though. The last week, 10 days, the recent events, have they shaken the industry at all, or is it par for the course? What's happened with Paytm?
So I think the RBI governor said this very well when he was talking about the risk weight average change. So that was the industry-wide event which everyone thought was surprising. He said we have to do things which will set us on a course for success for 20 years. So we're not going to be measured by what happens this year or this quarter. As long as we make the choices which will keep the Indian market growing, the Indian consumer growing over the next 20 years, we have done well. So I think in the long run, it's a great space. Indian consumers are getting more and more savvy. Data is becoming more and more available. India has tremendous strengths in new age technology. So I'm very excited for the next 10 years.
Just talking about that technology, now, many countries in the world do have good financial tech led by private companies. They're private companies, they have some good financial tech, and they put it out there in the market. India is a bit unique, and there's a great opportunity in that you've got all of that riding on public infrastructure, UPI, and the India stack, and the things that can be enabled. Do you see that as a major competitive advantage?
It is a major competitive advantage, right? Because let's say in the US, I wanted to sign a contract. I go to a private company like DocuSign, I pay them, and then I can use their product. In India, we use Aadhaar eSign. You know, it's relatively very, very low cost. It's built on government infrastructure, and it's available for almost free. Like eSign, we also have video KYC, we have UPI, and I think what's very exciting, Vikram, is imagine if we could do the same thing for artificial intelligence. So if I have to today get access to anonymized data anywhere in the world, I have to build it, right? I've got to be a Meta, I've got to be a Google. But in India, if we create secure and anonymized architecture where we can build world-class AI systems, it's an incredible opportunity. And digital public goods is what the rest of the world is now looking at India, saying, you girls and you guys did it right. How can we learn from you? So it's incredible how we actually leapfrog, right? What's happening in America and what's happening in Europe today.
So obviously that's great for the Indian consumer, it's great for the Indian market. Does it in any way make it more difficult for an individual private company? Because two things. One, you can't really go out and build IP around certain aspects of that technology because it's public, it's available to everything. And a second aspect of it is tougher to build a moat because anyone can tomorrow come and ride on UPI and e-sign and Aadhaar to do some crazy stuff.
Great question, right? So think of it as digital infra. So when the finance minister said 11.1 lakh crore, that goes into digital infra also. Now your differentiation has to be on top of that. So are you going to be better because your roads are better or because your airports are better? No, because that's available to everyone. But what do you build on top? Are you offering that consumer benefit, that better pricing, that instant checkout? Is your product more relevant that rather than going to 10 large existing lenders or banks, they're willing to work with a fintech partnered with a bank? So the innovation goes one level above into consumer experience.
Is it only innovation, or does it then become also a question of network effects, that a lot of people are offering relatively simple thing, it becomes top of the mind recall, whom do you remember, who's got the biggest brand name, which means you've then got to spend those marketing dollars or marketing rupees to actually get top of the mind recall?
So I think it's a combination of things, right? And what the public markets are now telling companies, and you asked earlier a great question, saying if there's a winter in private markets, what the public market is saying is that they want to see profit, right? And you're not going to get profit by burning up a ton of money doing a ton of things. So I think a lot of digital companies are getting smart to the fact that They need to keep their fixed costs tight. They need to keep their margins high. They really need to focus on building both network effects and innovation, which will cut the cost of delivery, so that it doesn't matter if you're in a metro city, you're in tier 1, tier 2, but the same Aadhaar e-sign has to work in a village in India on the mobile phone. The same video KYC. Like, think of video KYC, right? So 2 years ago, or pre-COVID, an officer had to come to your house to pick up your PAN card, your Aadhaar card, and an officer every month would do 70 cases. So I could go to 70 homes, 3 a day, and pick up documents. Now with video KYC, the same officer sits in Delhi, but does 700 video KYCs a month. So it's 10x productivity, and the same officer is working across 1,000 locations, because you're sitting in one location, people are using their phone, bandwidth is cheapest in India in the world, and you finish a video KYC authentication, and the account is opened, or the home loan is dispersed. So it's amazing how much leverage technology can give India.
So who would be, for a company like yours, which is like a marketplace, what would you say is your biggest competitor? Would it be somebody, other marketplaces, other people who are trying to give a range of different products? Or potentially could your competitor just become a bank, right? A ICICI Bank or a HDFC, which suddenly says, we're going to do technology better and we're going to innovate and we have good brand recall. So we'll directly go to the customer and we won't offer the choice that perhaps you'd get in a bank bazaar.
See, great question. I think the first thing that's really interesting, and you called this out earlier, is less than 3% of India has a home loan or a credit card. So there's so much opportunity to grow that there's enough space for everyone. Now, I think our competitor at Bank Bazaar is that traditionally a credit product is offered to you by your bank. So whoever you have your salary account with will give you a credit card, will give you a home loan. But very often, right, the bank you bank with, there are 52 banks out there who might have a better offer for you. I think what UPI has done, what Aadhaar has done, what video KYC has done, what account aggregator has done, is it said it's a level playing field. The consumer is queen or king. I can share my data with any of these 52 in partnership with a fintech, and whoever gives me the best product, the easiest product, the most relevant product, I'll take it. So we're competing with the offline traditional way of thinking, but without changing that, Vikram, how can we truly leapfrog and get to where we need to go?
So is it also perhaps the case, coming back to the point you were making about only 3% of people are using some of these products, yeah. Paradoxically, the more competition there is, the maybe better for you, because if everyone starts using credit cards and everyone starts using bank loans and everyone gets health insurance, actually the opportunity is so much there. So if the pond becomes bigger and bigger, it doesn't matter how large you specifically are.
It's interesting, right? Because people sometimes say, hey, UPI is now 12 lakh crores last year. Credit cards, right, is 12 lakh crores a month, sorry, and credit card is 1 lakh crore a month. What is the opportunity in credit card when UPI is growing at a 60% CAGR? But very interestingly, India is the world's largest and fastest growing market for credit card. We've been growing at 25% spends increase for the last 5 years. India is a market where everyone is rushing to. So the incredible opportunity is there's space for every kind of technology. As long as you find relevance to the Indian consumer, I think UPI will grow and credit cards will grow and home loans will grow and personal loans will grow.
Looking at some of the challenges and the problems, the first question, of course, comes around, regulation. In the past, it's often happened, especially in the fintech space, regulation changes, things are not done correct, it can throw things off. As I began by asking the question about Paytm and everything that's happened out there and was KYC correct or not. Does that shake confidence in you or other people, or does it give you a sort of a set of things to say, well, we better be careful not to do X, Y, Z?
So I think we should pull out and look at the last few years, right? And I think a new process has now started with policy making. So a very, very big foundational change which happened is when digital lending rules and guidelines came out, essentially to clamp down on predatory lending. Now, the way it happened, right, is the RBI put out a consultation paper. All the industry bodies, all the fintechs responded with comments on that. Then they met everyone, and then the draft law came out, and then it got notified. I think at the end of the day, we can't take a unique case and make a call, right? I think the trend has been that for India to succeed, the digital economy has to grow. Digital public goods has to grow. I think no one doubts it. In the finance minister's budget speech, she used the word fintech repeatedly. It happened last year too. So I think the digital economy will grow. I think the consultative process is the right way to go. What the regulators are now thinking about is self-regulatory organization, because everyone's got the sense that innovation is moving so fast that it's very hard for someone to regulate AI sitting so far away from the industry. So they're trying to create self-regulatory bodies where the industry players come together as a group, not as individuals. They then work in a consultative regulatory policy-making framework where I put out a draft, the regulator puts out a draft, industry responds, then the final law comes out. I'm very positive, right, that directionally we're moving in absolutely the right direction, thanks to the Reserve Bank of India, thanks to the Ministry of Finance. There is a consultative process going on.
When you look at the specific challenges then around things like KYC or getting to know, a lot of people don't have documentation. The documentation has not been clear. India has been a market where a lot of things were happening under the table. Now it's being organized. Data is being procured. The IT department now has a lot of information, a lot of people. So the more it formalizes, the better it is, the easier it is, and the easier it becomes for fintech. How far on that process towards formalization do you think we are getting? A lot of your clients are saying, yeah, we do have documents now.
Yeah, so we have made great strides. So first we have to give credit to the industry for that. Like I said, a bank officer who used to do 70 KYCs a month, today with video KYC is doing 700. I think that is a significant leap forward for India. I think the mutual fund industry has done something brilliant, right? Today you do one KYC for one AUM, for one AMC, and everyone has it, right? I think other industries can learn from that. I think right now, there are things that are being worked on. For example, we have a great tech called DigiLocker. So DigiLocker has 180 million Indians who can store up to 400 document types each. So your driver's license is available there. Potentially your university certificates are available there. Now, one of the projects being worked on is income tax needs to integrate with DigiLocker. Because today your Form 26AS, your TDS is not available, your EPAN is not available. So I think the industry is constantly engaging with the ministry, with the regulators, saying, hey, we're working on the ground. There are people who don't have A, B, or C. Can we help them out, right? And hopefully every quarter, we're going to see some improvement come in.
All right. Privacy concerns in all of this, or no? The more data you have, the better it is.
No, we need to keep constantly learning, right? We every day, whether it's in
security. Privacy also leads to cybersecurity and cyber theft issues. If all of this information is very easily available to a lot of people, they are going to be bad actors who are going to misuse it.
Yeah, so like the previous panelist said, we have to be on our toes and we have to constantly keep learning. See, the DPDP privacy law has been notified. So there is a standing law as we speak. There are certain rules which are now expected. The law in itself is taken into account all global best practices. So it says the consumer is the principal. The consumer has the right to take away permission. The consumer should be told what her data will be used for. So I think we need to start making sure the law is applied, is enforced, everyone follows it. Same thing with InfoSec, right? There's great technology out there. Every day the challenge changes. The minute we feel we have learned everything, I think something will go wrong. Continuously we need to assess, improve, and learn from our mistakes.
Looking at the biggest untapped segments of the market, right? UPI is there, people are making payments, credit cards growing very fast. You used a phrase, predatory loans, a short while back. Is that one of the options? Because it's often been said in India for as long as I can remember that, hey, isn't it crazy that, if you're really rich, you can get a loan for you can get a car loan for 7, 8%, 10%, 12%. But if you're a farmer wanting to get loans, you can't, and microcredit. But is that the sort of a thing where technology can help in providing easier access to capital?
Yeah, so we need to do things which are sustainable. So we can do something that is predatory, it'll grow very fast, very soon, but then something will go off the rails. Everyone knows what happened with predatory lending in China. Grew very big and then one day completely shut down. I think the nice thing about tech, right, and I think Mr. Nilekani says this very well, it's the exact same UPI, the exact same Aadhaar, the exact same video KYC that's operating in the biggest private office in Mumbai and in, the tier 3 town when someone is opening a bank account. So the technology we're building, right, we think it is for the super smart, but today everyone in India is comfortable with video. There's no one who doesn't do a video call in India, right? Everyone today has an Aadhaar. Everyone today is comfortable with UPI. I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, we are a world leader in digital payment. And a very simple metric, right, is we have over 10 billion digital payments in India every month. That's more than US, UK, China, Japan combined. But can we now do this for other financial products? What we've done for digital payments, can we do it for credit? Can we do it for mutual funds? Can we do it for insurance? Because if we are able to, right, I think we'll truly leapfrog the Western markets.
But these are also obvious areas where, for example, AI can be used. When you have that much data and you can train the models on that much data, then, for example, it should be not too challenging for someone, you, for example, to build a model that will be able to say, this person is safe. Give a loan to this person is safe, this person is not going to default, right? The credit score, in other words, that we're talking about. To the power of 10, where you can really predict fairly accurately that this person will not default. And that can be extended. Then you can use AI for the government to predict that this person is probably not defaulting on his tax and this person probably is.
I'm sure they're doing that today. So
they probably are. They probably are, but getting it wrong once in a while. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think here's the exciting thing about AI. ChatGPT came out November of 2022. So ChatGPT is literally 1 year and 4 months old. It's an incredible opportunity. We're at the nascency of how AI is going to be adopted by business. Whether it's a news channel, whether it's a government office, whether it's a fintech, it's an incredible opportunity where we have access to the same tools that anyone in the world has. Now the question is, how do we build on top of it? Because I think to build the foundational statistical model, that's a tough game and that's an advanced game which is already, takes a lot of capex to run. But how do we take these tools and build high quality processes such that we're able to cut cost, increase reach, increase quality? That could differentiate India over the next decade. If we get the right rules, the right policies, and the right safety nets in place, AI can fundamentally take India into a different growth orbit.
I've spent the entire evening asking people to look ahead to 2030. So as you look ahead to the Bank Bazaar experience in 2030, is it fundamentally going to be, you're going to put on a helmet and you're going to be speaking to an AI entity and saying, I need a loan, help me get it, and that person does everything for you?
So I think...
Well, you say you can already do that with the web. It's coming out not 2030, but 2 months from now.
See, putting on a headset and being able to think something and us being able to read it...
okay, Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro, that's all.
Right. So here's the thing. I think every quarter things are changing. When I started as a fintech entrepreneur 15 years ago, and what's happening today, it's completely different. And what I've realized is the only way to stay relevant is to keep learning, right? We didn't even know something like ChatGPT existed till about 15 months ago. We didn't know video KYC was possible till the RBI allowed it during COVID. I think every year things are coming out. I think there are new experiences, new way of thinking. It's very hard for me to predict or visualize what 2030 will look like. But I know that unless we keep learning, right, 3 years from now, we're not going to be relevant. So what we encourage ourselves to do is say that, hey, what is happening out there? Learn from your competition, learn from, all the great tools available out there. Today, right, you can listen in on your news channel, thought leaders coming and speaking about how we should be thinking. So I think it's a brilliant opportunity to stay abreast, but where we'll be in 2030 remains to be seen.
And I'm going to just pick up from that one line and leave that as a thought for everybody. Perhaps that's the one thought you should keep in your mind at events like this or generally in life. If you don't keep learning, 3 years from now, you will not be relevant. That's something to reflect on and something to project forward. Thank you so much, Adil, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.